Last night we spoke about how one can help to develop the perception of impermanence and suffering. We also said that the three universal characteristics are actually one, nature of reality. But it appears to be three, or it is described as three, so that as it appears to the beginner. And see, you notice or you perceive them clearer and clearer as your vipassana mindfulness progresses. And of the three universal characteristics, the main one is anatta, non-self. The two main ways of defining anatta. First is the negative form by saying what is not, means what is atta or self. The other is a direct to say what is actually anatta. The first one is necessary to remove those wrong views, which when you cling on to it as upadana, clinging, then you cannot see the reality. So first you have to remove that. There are a lot of beliefs that believe very strong in an everlasting self. By themselves they may not be so bad in the sense that the person still does a lot of good. But in terms of vipassana, it definitely obstructs the empirical and the inferential knowledge of reality. So the first thing is to keep an open mind. You don't usually say, okay, the beginner, he comes, Mr. Beginner, Madam Beginner, you don't exist, okay? You don't have a soul. They'll probably be too confused or frightened or shocked, and they would probably never see them again, which is okay with me, but it's not compassionate. No? So we have to use a different, slowly infiltrate. We said, well, meditation is very good for you. Get peace of mind, it overcomes a lot of stress, even your diseases become healed, which is true. So when they meditate, they get all these good benefits, plus other benefits they don't expect, like right view and getting rid of wrong view. One step further. To be selfish craving is very bad. It gives you bad results. It's important for us to be happy to get rid of this selfish cling to I mind. Then we become hearts become more open and more acceptance of truth, and we be more happy and peaceful. But we haven't mentioned anything about the soul. No? I remember one incident. I had a translator who was more than helpful. There was this young man there. And so I asked him, do you understand anatta? He said, no. And before I could explain to him, the translator started explaining. She started explaining, you see there's this body, feelings, perception, consciousness, formations, they rise and change. There's nobody there. So do you understand? No. She took a deep breath, started again. I think there are 5 aggregates. Do you understand now? No. After that, she took a deeper breath. She started explaining it again. After the third time, he also said, no. Finally, I stopped her, basta, don't talk. So I started explaining a different way. You see, when you are a young boy and you are a big boy, are you the same person? He said, no. You see? And you further explained that, no. As you begin to watch more of your meditate, of your mind-body processes, you discover more about what you are and who you are. So, who you thought you are is not true. And of course I have to appease him further by saying, we don't get rid of you. What you're discovering of more of what you are rather than who you are, then that you are part of a greater nature. So slowly, we try to bring him to experience anatta. So when you start experiencing with vipassana mindfulness of what things really are, not what people tell you, not what books say, but through your direct experience, and then there's this nature where you are not there. Then came along a big-time scholar. He said, Bhante, the Buddha didn't say that all 5 aggregates are non-self, but he didn't say what is outside the 5 aggregates are not self. What did I say? Oh yes, there are a lot of suttas that say that. You big scholar, how come you don't know? So this is what you call comes with thinking. So when you start looking more and more into these 5 aggregates and mind-body processes, you become more and more clear there's no person there. but doesn't mean there's nothing there. It's reality. And depending on your level of insight, you experience the deepening levels of reality. Finally, you experience the rock bottom of the unconditioned Nibbana is also non-self. See, when you say non-self, it doesn't mean nothing. It means reality. So in the beginning, this sense of an I or ego is very strong because we have been brought up with that. So we could do something about it. First thing we could do is have some theoretical understanding and arguments which you can find in the suttas. For example, the Anatta Sutta, it starts with this type of arguments. So, but in the suttas and Abhidhamma, all talks about anatta. Secondly, you wash the intention, because this sense of I and ego begins very often with the intention. So I find that sometimes the first insight knowledge, which is very much connected with anatta, arises while watching intentions. So the watching intentions is very helpful in this sense of overcoming wrong views, egocentrism, as well as finding out about the conditioning and non-self. This perception of conditioning is important or fundamental in overcoming the wrong view of the self. Because we think of something everlasting and unchanging, is because we see it as one thing which is unchanging. But when you see many things in it and you see them changing, it automatically would diffuse this clinging to a self. Then the other thing one can do is detect this strong sense of I am, myself, when it arises. And it comes from the very simple intention to something more gross. This very simple intention to something very big. Big one, for example, is as somebody reach some kind of excellence, some kind of very high standard thing. As we say, they have every reason to be proud. People who become very powerful. For example, when you are the king, the emperor of all China, emperor of Japan, the emperor of Rome, very powerful. And when I say, off with his head, somebody will come and chop off his head. And so you don't offend him. Why? Because the power, they say, corrupts completely. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So be careful. This egocentrism, very terrible thing. Makes you feel good, it makes you feel great, it makes you feel powerful. Then after that, it hammers you down and you go down. Somebody once told me his experience with Sayadaw Pandita. The first day he came, Sayadaw Pandita praised him to the skies. So he was feeling very proud. After that, the whole month, he started hammering him. Usually when you see it arising, there it is again, look at it. Then you see how stupid it is. Then one thing what you can do is, especially with regards to intentions, just bear in mind that you are not the person intending to do something. It is just consciousness knowing and in mental state of intention working. So when you come to meditation, then what helps in the actual process is, before that, of course, you have to look into the whole process of identification. How you identify with this, how you identify with that. When you have this wrong perception of self, then you hold on to it and you seem so real to you. So when you start developing the perception of impermanence, perception of suffering, then the perception of non-self would also grow. So usually people say you see impermanence and suffering first before you see non-self. What actually they see is not the impermanence or suffering, but those characteristics or those manifestations. Because the first insight knowledge is non-self. Then you see into the deeper manifestations of non-self, which are impermanence and suffering. So when you're able to see that, then you can look into deeper and deeper nature of these Paramattha Dhammas, ultimate realities, and their conditioning. So when you're able to accept all this, then your perception of anatta becomes stronger and stronger. And when they do that, then the ego conceit and the wrong views and the clinging become farther and farther away. And one should not think that, okay, I've experienced anatta, that's it. No, anatta is something very profound and very deep. For example, the egocentrism is removed, eradicated only in the Arahant. Doesn't mean the other levels they are egoistic. No, they are not egoistic, but it's present in very subtle forms. For example, even in the stream, when the sense of I is, a lot of it is gone. So all this comes with, we call it the element of perception. Finally, when you go to the supramundane, unconditioned, perception is also there. It's the perception of the signless, the unconditioned element. It has to be there, otherwise there's no such thing as realization. What is it and how is it? There's something to be realized by each wise man for himself. And the unconditioned object is the most subtlest object there is. And so the perception has to be very sharp, like a pinpoint. The pinpoint is so fine that it disappears. Because when a pin disappears, there's no more pin. But in the mind, it's different. When it goes to a point, it becomes transcendental, which is a perception that a normal person won't understand. So you have this perception. Now we go to the next aggregate of mental formation, sankhara khandha. As I said before, the word sankhara, depending on where it's used, in what context, has different meanings. For example, one common use is regarded as formations of compounded things. For example, the phrase of Vaya Dhamma Sankhara Appamadena Sampadetati, the last admonition by the Buddha. Vaya, that means change. Dhamma is phenomena, sankhara is formations. Formations are always in a state of flux. Appamadena sampadeta, appamadena, by means of carefulness. Sometimes they call it heedfulness. Strive on. You summarize the whole of the Buddha's teachings. The first part is the statement of condition. Second is, so, Laura, what are you going to do with it? Do. Strive on with diligence. So in this case, sankhara means formations that are like building blocks of existence. When you come to talk about sankhara khandha, it refers to the volitional activities of the consciousness. For example, like it was said in the dependent order origination, paticca samuppada, avijja paccaya sankhara, sankhara paccaya vijnana. Dependent on delusion, formations arise. Dependent on formations arise consciousness. And it is explained that formations here refers to the three types of formations: punyabhi sankhara, apunyabhi sankhara, and anenjabhi sankhara. Punyabhi sankhara means punya is wholesome, meritorious formations, unmeritorious formations, and unshakable formations, perturbable sometimes. The last one refers to those in the arupa jhanas. Generally, they are also called the great creators. Great creators. Source of creation. Just looking at it as a very general and also in a very deep sense. But when you come to meditation, you see it all the time. Because the main force involved here is the cetana, the volition. Can you see yourself creating things? Even when you sit and try to meditate, the mind is always trying to create stories. Story has been created, you recreate it. Sometimes you make it worse, you make it better. Once one story is finished, you start another story. So, vipassana, when you see all this, I want to do this, I want to do that. If I want to have a hammer, I build myself a meditation center, a hammer in the morning, hammer it every day. So, all your life creation starts with the mind. When you say, look, I don't want to think, but it goes thinking by itself. It's true, but you are a victim of it anyway. So the creation can be active and the creation can be passive. That means you start thinking of what you want to do. And after that, it starts thinking by itself. It's still active. That means karma is still being produced. Passive is different. Passive are the results of the karma. For example, you see things. I didn't want to see. I opened my eyes, I see. But it's the resultant karma that create all this. For example, there's certain things you want to hear, there's certain things you don't want to hear. When you don't want to hear certain things, like somebody tell you, complain to you, tell you about some other people's bad points. He's very bad. And so what do? Chase him away. Actually, in the first case, whether what you heard is true or not is one thing, but first I go hammer your head first. If somebody complains to me, all those, they may be true, they may not. Hammer the head first. For example, I remember Malaysia, this lady was doing everything, every mindful, everything was slow motion. She can sit long time and everything very quiet. But when it comes to interview, she start complaining, that fellow doing this fellow doing that. I thought you were meditating so mindful, how come you look at all other people doing so many wrong? She said, but because they tell me, so I listen. Who wants you to listen? You're supposed to not hearing. So you can see in your meditation, the mind is always creating stories, always looking for certain things to do. So it's not them thinking, intending, don't know what. Then you're watching sankharas arising and passing away. This, while you are there, you don't think. So there's less creation going on. But still, there's a meditation going on. Meditation is also doing something. So meditation also, there is sankhara, because meditation type of sankharas. Like in the right effort and all those, they talk of this type of effort in sankharas in meditation. But this is a different type of sankhara. This is, we call it vivattagami. That is the type of meritorious acts that lead out of samsara, the cycle. That means it tries to dust away with. It's a creation, it's action to decondition all this creation in samsara. It's just like, this great machine is going on, creating things. Put one baby comes out. 10 babies come out. 100,000 babies come out. Where do they come from? From this terrible machine, sankhara. So sankhara paccaya vijnana. From the karmic conditioning arises the rebirth consciousness. Because all these things involved with creation are concerned with existence. So why does one life continue after another? Because there is a craving for existence, bhavatanha. Vipassana, we create the path. That means to detach that brings about detachment from this craving. Because of that, it leads one out of samsara. I think we stop here tonight.